People literally called me insane when they saw me pouring this weird white liquid all over my dying plants. My neighbors thought I'd completely lost my mind, my family staged an intervention, and even the guys at the garden center told me I was going to kill everything in my yard. But 6 weeks later, those same people were begging me to tell them my secret because my garden looked like something out of a fairy tale. What I'm about to show you goes against everything you've been taught about plant care. It breaks every single rule in the gardening book, and honestly, it sounds so crazy that I probably wouldn't believe it either if I hadn't seen the results with my own eyes. But this one weird thing completely transformed my garden from a disaster zone into the most incredible paradise you've ever seen. I'm talking about using milk. Yeah, regular milk from your refrigerator, the same milk you put on your cereal, the same milk you drink with cookies, the same milk that everyone told me would rot my plants from the inside out and attract every pest within a 50-mile radius. But here's the thing that nobody wanted to believe. It actually works better than any expensive fertilizer I'd ever tried. Let me paint you a picture of how absolutely terrible my garden situation was before this discovery. I had spent over $300 on plant food, organic fertilizers, and soil amendments over just 2 months, and my plants looked worse than when I started. My tomatoes were covered in these horrible black spots that kept spreading no matter what I did. My roses had this disgusting white powdery stuff coating every single leaf, making them look like they'd been dusted with flour. And my vegetable garden honestly looked like a plant cemetery where everything went to die. I was so frustrated that I was seriously considering giving up gardening completely and just paving over the whole thing to turn it into a patio. Every morning, I'd walk outside hoping to see some improvement, and instead, I'd find more dead leaves, more disease, and plants that looked even worse than the day before. My confidence was completely shot, and I felt like the biggest gardening failure on the planet. Then my sister-in-law, Jenny, who's always been into weird natural remedies and alternative everything, came over for a barbecue and saw my disaster of a garden. She suggested I try using diluted milk as a plant spray, and I honestly thought she was absolutely nuts. I mean, who in their right mind would spray dairy products on plants? It sounded like the fastest way to create a moldy, stinky mess that would attract rats, flies, and every other pest in the neighborhood, while making my whole yard smell like sour milk. But Jenny insisted she'd seen it work before, and she kept telling me about some organic gardener she knew who swore by this method. I was so desperate at that point that I was willing to try literally anything, even something that sounded completely ridiculous. Desperate people do crazy things, and I was definitely desperate. So the next morning, I mixed up this solution that looked completely ridiculous, grabbed my spray bottle, and started coating my plants with what looked like watery milk. My husband came outside to get his coffee and asked if I was trying to feed the plants breakfast. The neighbors were definitely staring from their windows, probably wondering if I'd finally cracked under the pressure of complete garden failure. I felt absolutely ridiculous standing there in my pajamas spraying milk on my roses while my neighbors watched, but something inside me said to give it a chance. Little did I know that this one bizarre decision would completely change everything I thought I knew about gardening and turn me into the person everyone in the neighborhood comes to for plant advice. Here's exactly what I did, step by step, and why this crazy method actually works better than anything you can buy at the store. The science behind using milk on plants is actually pretty amazing once you understand what's really happening, even though it sounds completely insane at first and makes everyone think you've lost your mind. I started with regular whole milk from my fridge, nothing special or organic, just the cheap store brand stuff I buy for my kids' cereal every week. The key is getting the ratio exactly right, and this took me some serious trial and error to figure out because there's no instruction manual for spraying dairy products on plants. I mixed 1 part milk with 9 parts water in a spray bottle, which creates this weird-looking milky solution that honestly looks like someone dumped leftover cereal milk into a garden sprayer. Here's where it gets really interesting from a science perspective and why this method actually makes sense, even though it sounds absolutely ridiculous. Milk contains proteins and amino acids that plants can actually absorb through their leaves and use as nutrients, kind of like a foliar feeding, but with something you'd normally drink. But more importantly, milk has these amazing natural antifungal properties that actively fight off diseases like powdery mildew, black spot, and other nasty fungal infections that had been completely destroying my plants for months. The calcium in milk strengthens plant cell walls at the cellular level, making them significantly more resistant to diseases, pests, and environmental stress. The proteins help with overall plant health and growth by providing building blocks that plants need for strong development. And here's the part that absolutely blew my mind when I researched it. The lactose in milk actually feeds beneficial bacteria in the soil, which then help plants absorb nutrients more effectively and create a healthier root environment. But here's what nobody tells you about using milk on plants, and this is crucial information that can make the difference between success and complete disaster. Timing and application method make all the difference between getting incredible results and accidentally killing your plants. I spray my plants early in the morning when the sun isn't too strong and the temperature is still cool, because if you spray milk on plants in hot afternoon sun, it can actually burn the leaves and create brown spots that look worse than the original problems. I also discovered through some painful mistakes that you absolutely cannot just spray milk on plants once and expect miracles to happen overnight. This isn't a one-time fix that solves everything immediately. I do this treatment every single week without fail, and consistency is absolutely crucial for getting the incredible results I'm about to show you. Some weeks I was tempted to skip it because it felt so weird, and my neighbors were definitely judging me hard, but I stuck with the schedule because I was starting to see small but encouraging improvements. The first thing I noticed after just 3 days was that the white powdery mildew on my roses started disappearing like magic. This disgusting stuff had been covering my rose bushes for months, making them look absolutely terrible and embarrassing, and nothing I tried had worked. Expensive fungicides from the garden center, organic treatments that cost a fortune, changing my watering schedule completely. Nothing helped until I started spraying them with this bizarre milk solution that made me feel like I was conducting some kind of weird science experiment. The results I'm about to show you are so dramatic and unbelievable that people actually accused me of switching out my plants or hiring some kind of expensive professional service to secretly treat my garden. But I have photos documenting every single week of this transformation, and it's absolutely mind-blowing what happened in just 6 weeks of using this crazy milk method that everyone said would destroy my plants. Remember those roses I showed you earlier that were covered in white powdery mildew and looked like they were about to die completely? The ones that looked so bad I was considering ripping them out and replacing them with fake plastic flowers? After 6 weeks of weekly milk sprays, they turned into the most gorgeous, healthy rose bushes you've ever seen in your entire life. The leaves were deep emerald green and so shiny they looked like they'd been polished. The stems were thick and strong like tree branches, and they produced more blooms than they had in the previous 3 years combined. But the real shock that made me realize this wasn't just some crazy coincidence came with my vegetable garden, which had been a complete disaster for 2 growing seasons in a row. My tomato plants went from these sad, diseased-looking things with yellow leaves and spreading black spots to absolutely massive, healthy plants that grew over 6 feet tall and were loaded with perfect, beautiful tomatoes. I'm talking about plants so productive that I was harvesting fresh tomatoes every single day and giving away bags of them to everyone in the neighborhood because I couldn't keep up with the harvest. My cucumber plants, which had never produced more than a few sad, bitter-looking cucumbers in previous years, suddenly went absolutely crazy and started producing like commercial greenhouse plants. I was picking fresh, crisp cucumbers every single morning, and they were the most delicious, refreshing cucumbers I'd ever grown. My kids, who normally refuse to eat any vegetables, actually started requesting cucumber slices as snacks because these homegrown ones tasted so much better than anything we'd ever bought from the grocery store. The most shocking transformation that convinced me this method was pure magic happened with my pepper plants. These plants had been sitting there doing absolutely nothing productive for months, just existing and taking up space but not really growing or producing anything useful. They were like garden decorations that weren't even decorative. After starting the milk treatments, they exploded with new growth and started producing peppers like they were in some kind of pepper growing competition. I harvested over 60 peppers from just 3 plants, and they were huge, colorful, perfectly shaped peppers that looked like they belonged in a magazine. But here's what really convinced me that this wasn't just beginner's luck or perfect weather conditions. My flower garden also had this incredible transformation that happened at the exact same time. My petunias, which had been struggling with some kind of nasty fungal infection that made their leaves look spotted and gross, suddenly became these lush, full plants covered in bright, healthy blooms that lasted way longer than normal. My marigolds doubled in size practically overnight and produced flowers that were bigger and more vibrant than I'd ever seen before in any garden. The crazy part that still amazes me is that all of this incredible transformation happened while I was spending basically nothing on plant care. Instead of buying expensive fungicides and fertilizers every month like I used to do, I was using milk that I already had in my fridge for my family. I calculated that this method saved me over $400 in plant care products, and my results were better than anything I'd achieved with expensive treatments. My neighbors went from thinking I was crazy to constantly asking for advice about their own plant problems. The same people who were laughing at me for spraying milk on my plants were now begging me to help them figure out why their gardens weren't thriving like mine. Word spread around the neighborhood so fast that I had strangers knocking on my door asking about my secret method. Now let me share the advanced techniques I discovered through months of experimentation that took my results from amazing to absolutely incredible. These are the game-changing tips that I figured out through trial and error, some happy accidents, and a lot of research, and they can make the difference between good results and results that will completely blow your mind and make you the neighborhood gardening expert. First, I learned that different types of milk work better for different specific problems, and this discovery changed everything about how I approach plant care. Whole milk works best for serious fungal infections like powdery mildew and black spot, because it has more proteins and fats that actively fight these diseases at the cellular level. But for general plant health and encouraging new growth, I actually get much better results using 2% milk, because it has less fat that might clog plant pores while still providing all the beneficial nutrients and proteins that plants crave. I also discovered something that sounds even crazier than the original method. Adding a tiny bit of baking soda to the milk solution creates this incredible supercharged treatment that works even better than milk alone. The baking soda raises the pH slightly, which makes the solution even more effective against fungal problems and creates an environment that beneficial bacteria love. I use about half a teaspoon of baking soda per quart of milk solution, and the results are absolutely insane compared to using milk by itself. Here's another technique that completely shocked me with its effectiveness and goes against everything you'd think makes sense. Using expired milk that's just starting to go sour actually works better than fresh milk for some specific applications. The slightly acidic nature of milk that's beginning to sour seems to be even more effective at fighting stubborn fungal infections and pest problems. I know it sounds absolutely gross and wrong, but instead of throwing away milk that's past its expiration date, I dilute it and use it on my plants with incredible results that are better than fresh milk. For indoor plants, I developed a completely different approach that works amazingly well and has saved my houseplants from problems that used to kill them every winter. I use a much more diluted solution, about 1 part milk to 15 parts water, and I apply it with a soft cloth instead of spraying it directly. This gentler method has saved my houseplants from spider mites, aphids, and other indoor plant pests better than any expensive commercial product I've ever tried. I also learned that milk treatments work incredibly well as a preventative measure, not just for treating existing problems after they've already taken hold. I now spray all my new plants with diluted milk solution as soon as I plant them, before any problems develop, and they rarely get the diseases and pest issues that used to plague my garden every single year, like clockwork. The timing of applications makes a huge difference in effectiveness too. I get the absolute best results when I apply milk treatments in the early morning, when there's still dew on the plants, and the air is cool and humid. The natural moisture helps the milk solution spread evenly across the leaves and absorb better into the plant tissue. Applying treatments in the evening works well too, but never during the heat of the day, because it can cause leaf burn. For my fruit trees, I use a stronger solution during dormant season to prevent fungal problems before they start. This has eliminated the black spot and powdery mildew issues that used to destroy my apple and pear harvests every year. This method has completely revolutionized how I think about plant care, and it can do the exact same thing for your garden. Sometimes the best solutions are the ones that sound the most ridiculous at first. Those people who called me crazy are now using this method in their own gardens and getting the same incredible results. Milk on plants is definitely one of those solutions that works way better than anyone expects. Milk on plants is definitely one of those solutions that works way better than anyone expects.